Hi, this is Nick from the production duo Tilt. This is the video section for our review of the Plankton Electronics ANTS. Before we start, a couple of quick disclaimers. First off, as you can see, the ANTS has many different modulation possibilities, far too many to cover in one review. Secondly, I will be pushing the ANTS filter into self-oscillation, so watch your volume levels. The ANTS is classed in the family of desktop modular synths. Its input and output sections are fully compatible with the Eurorack standard. The synth comes with a pack of 10 multicoloured cables, and also 3 of what they've named Ninja Stars. These are a quick and easy way of summing signals together. To get us started, usefully sections of the ANTS are already pre-normalled. The low-pass filter is set fully open with no resonance, and the amp envelope has got a fast attack and a reasonably short decay. I've just used one cable from the ANTS main out to my monitoring system. The amp envelope section has got a trigger button, so you can manually play sounds without having to connect an external keyboard or sequencer. So first off, let's have a listen to the oscillators. This is the oscillator XT-OSC-Y, and this is pre-normalled to the square wave. So sweeping through the range there, you can hear how the oscillators definitely sound analog. I haven't looked at the waveforms on an oscilloscope, but to my ears, they've got the richness of a slightly non-pure wave. After all, that is the sound of a classic VCO. Let's have a listen to the pulse width modulation on the square wave. This has got a really large range, as you'll hear. Moving on to the filter section, here the input can be trimmed. This greatly affects the tone of the filter and gives loads of flexibility. The higher the input is driven, the more aggressive the filter will sound, but with less resonance. So in low pass mode, with no resonance, let's have a listen to the filter sweeping down and up. Just adding a bit more decay and now some resonance. Let's have a listen. And now backing the input off, but adding much more resonance. With the filter input set to minimum and the resonance set to maximum, we can now set the filter into self-oscillation. Now let's have a listen to the high-pass filter. Firstly, with the input driven slightly. Now let's back the input off and turn the resonance up. The ANTS high-pass filter will also self-oscillate. flexibility of working with the input level and the resonance gives lots of different tonal opportunities for the filter. As set to default, the oscillator's pitch range isn't incredibly wide. The manufacturers state that the ANTS pitch will remain stable from control voltage across 2 to 3 octaves. For me, this isn't an issue, and I found the pitch range to be enough. Now let's have a listen to the same oscillator's sine wave output by patching it to the filter input. On amp envelope 1, the attack and decay times are quite fast. This makes it perfect for snappy bass sounds and plucks. The two oscillators, XT, OSC X and Y, are named so because their mode can be changed to an LFO, whereas the two other oscillators, OSC X and Y, are standard oscillators without this feature. Oscillator Y also features a sync input. So now, let's patch the triangle wave from XT OSC X into the filter. Now let's have a listen to the sawtooth wave from Oscillator X. Again, this is patched into the filter set to low pass with no resonance. Sweeping through the filter with the input driven, you can hear how raw the ANTS can sound if required. Just like the tone of the oscillators, the filter has got its own unique character, but not limited to just one timbre, dependent on the input level. Now the sawtooth wave with the filter set to high pass with quite a lot of resonance and drive. The ANTS can have up to 4 LFOs by switching the two oscillators into LFO mode, but here I've patched LFO Y into the filter's CV frequency input. The amount of filter modulation is controlled by the small pot. I like the fact that the LFO range is really wide. These speeds make the LFO useful for extremely slow or fast modulation. You can hear this with the LFO patched from its sine wave output. Now switching across to LFO-X's triangle wave. Let's listen to the LFO's square wave output. By pressing the LFO button on either of the two XT oscillators, this switches them across into LFO mode. Let's have a listen to its pulse wave output, this time set to the amp envelope trigger. Now, by patching the sample and hold output into XT Oscillator Y's pitch input, we get randomized pitches. This can also be synced via the clock input. Also adding a little bit of glide. Now let's listen to two oscillators triggered together. The pulse wave output of XT Osc Y is normal to filter input 1, and oscillator X's sawtooth wave is normal to the filter input 2. Let's have a listen to those together through the filter. Right, so what about all four oscillators together? What I've done is patched an external sequencer into the four oscillators' volt to octave pitch inputs. The gate output from the sequencer is also going into amp envelope 1's trigger input. I could have also used the MIDI input on the back and patched out to the oscillators from the MIDI to CV section. I've also used the mixer section, taking the output of the filter and mixing it with oscillator Y. Now let's patch in the fourth oscillator's triangle wave into the mixer section. So to round things up, the ANTS is an extremely flexible desktop modular. Its oscillators sound nice and warm, and the tonal capabilities of the filter section is good. What makes the ANTS stand out for me though is its flexibility. Not only do you get 4 oscillators and the capability of switching up to 4 LFOs, but there's also 2 separate envelopes, one attack decay and one attack release, sample and hold which is clockable, and a 3-input mixer section. There's also a built-in logic gate and a white noise generator. This makes the ANTS perfect to integrate into a modular system if you're lacking any of these features. I actually bought one without hearing it beforehand, and I'm more than happy with how it sounds. I like the fact that the ANTS can sound either clean or raw, and the flexibility of its modulation has opened up lots of possibilities of integrating it with other equipment. As Tilt, we've already used it on 2 separate productions, and to sum it up, you're getting a lot of synth for its cost. So hopefully, this video has been useful, and anybody planning on getting a desktop modular should certainly think about putting the Plankton Electronics ANTS high on their shopping list.